Children. Children, don't object to going to school. They're the best years of your life, so they say. If you don't learn what you can, you're a fool, and you'll regret it in many a way. And if your education is still free and leads you to some qualifications, then you and your fellows are the envy of the children of numerous nations. A lot of them don't get any schooling, or for the bit they get will have to pay, and will have to spend many hours slogging on the land or in a sweatshop each day. So don't resent being educated. The alternatives you would have hated. It's a gift. Don't ever be afraid to be laughed at. Laughter's a tonic and good for the soul. If you're a person who can create that, you should try and make it your lifelong goal. If you do not know why folk laugh at you, what you've said or done to cause derision, do not decide, whatever else you do, to cry and flee. That's the wrong decision. Just keep the laughter going if you can. Wait until it is almost subsiding, and then pretend you know how it began, by very slowly, knowingly smiling. In time, what made them laugh will become clear, and with luck, it will provide your career. Please. Intelligent people often hold back, as they know too well their limitations. Acutely aware of talents they lack, they won't take control on most occasions. Stupid folk, though, don't know they are stupid, therefore thrust themselves forward frequently, all of their lives making bid after bid to be chosen for tasks they shouldn't be. Thus, in the absence of those who are bright, silly duffers are often selected, which, because they don't do anything right, means many are adversely affected. So if you're brainy, please do volunteer, for when daft folk take charge, we've much to fear. A Safety on Safari Sonnet. For safe travelling, I strongly advise one adopts this straightforward precaution, and always assumes it really is wise that all minds could be prone to distortion. In fact, that anyone can be balmy, and might act in irrational ways, either on their own or as an army. They may make sure it's the end of one's days. A driver, for instance, can mow one down, or one may be elbowed under a train. Hooligans could mug one when one's in town. There's no end to the acts of the inane. But if one's on guard and always wary, travelling around needn't be scary. To women. No need to prove you're as good as a man. You're much better in so many ways. For a start, you give birth which no man can, and then breastfeed babes for hundreds of days. Then also you've that instinct of mothers which makes you so kindly and so caring, always helping less fortunate others, and your possessions constantly sharing. Then, of course, you're much lovelier and have a deal more sophistication. Your presence makes men behave gentlier, and you too can run a firm or nation. So you don't have to die up a mountain. We already know you're better than men. Buyers beware. Never assume that any substitute for any product deemed to be unsafe does in any way at all constitute a safe version of what it does replace. For some manufacturers do not care if their products are carcinogenic, or attempt to make the public aware or their workforce that they might make them sick. And if leaders are prone to bribery, they are invariably complicit, and will allow firms indefinitely to sell stuff which for purpose is not fit. So do some research before you buy aught, or you might be killed by what you have bought. Some advice to women. Do not marry a do-it-yourselfer if you do not wish to live in a mess. As his wife, his mate, and his helper, you'll be condemned to a life full of stress. He, the soppy chap, will be ecstatic, taking out fireplaces, knocking down walls, dust everywhere, and him emphatic he knows what is what, as he's got the ball. He will make your home just how you desired. The trouble is, by the time it's all done, no challenge is left, and newly upfired, he'll decide that it is time to move on. When asked to marry, ask if he has tools. And if he says yes, say no, or you're fools. Don't be upset by failure. If you're being done down repeatedly, and any good fortune you had seems spent, don't become miserable and angry, but just accept each past disappointment. For any setback is good for the soul. They remind us how many do suffer, and that few achieve their ultimate goal, and on this earth most have lives much tougher. And if you have any get up and go, you won't let any failure defeat you, but let it spur you on the world to show all of the brilliant things you can do. And never walk all over other folk. Remember how you felt. It was no joke. Don't be lonely. It's not that difficult to find a mate. Merely select where you go carefully, and you'll increase your chances of a date when you know who's in the majority. There are certain venues women adore, where menfolk are a bit thin on the ground, and similarly places men like more, in which few women can ever be found. If a man or woman desires a man, then try photo clubs, sports, and gardening. If a woman or man wants a woman, then go to bingo, choirs, and go dancing. And public transport can make two an us. That's true, for I met my wife on a bus. We, the public, we're horrified when of murders we hear, and that is understandable indeed. But whene'er it comes to road deaths, I fear, we don't seem to take a great deal of heed. Over 3 times the number of people upon our roads every year are killed than the whole of Britain's murder total, yet we don't seem to be with horror filled. This must mean our love of cars is so great, it exceeds our love of one another, and for all our convenience's sake, we're prepared to slaughter sister, brother. So when any of us get in a car, we ought to ask where our consciences are. Dust, fumes, and smoke, and your lungs. Your lungs, they should always be protected. They're vital for your life's preservation, and can so easily be affected, sans you having any indication. You should therefore take measures to ensure that you do not inhale dust, fumes, or smoke, especially as there's really no cure for the diseases which they do provoke. So if there's dust, fumes, or smoke you alter, tell those persons whom these are creating that they should vacuum, screen, or water, so that no one is forced to breathe them in. In fact, as dust, fumes, smoke can be lethal, failure to protect is now illegal. Poop and scoop. We mustn't let our children be blinded. It is terrible when one cannot see, so they should constantly be reminded about how dangerous dog dirt can be. Do not let them touch it with their fingers, and then put them in their mouths as they do, for it's not only the smell that lingers, but toxicara canis which you'll rue. For if ingested into one's system, it can blind one for the rest of one's days. These are facts. It's not wise to dismiss them, or lives could be harmed in so many ways. So please do not leave your doggy's dirt piled, or you may cause the blinding of a child. Don't spoil them. Your children shouldn't be routinely spoiled and given all they want till they're sated, for you'll find the more for them you have toiled, the less you will be appreciated. It's a good idea, it's worth a try, to inform them what you cannot afford, and to tell them that whatever they buy, in a few weeks with it they will be bored. It's also worth you getting together with the parents of all your children's friends, and agreeing not to let peer pressure make you fork out on new fads and new trends. If you want kids to be nice and succeed, it's your love and time that they really need. Parents, have a care. Do not let stupid men take your children on expeditions to goodness knows where, or you'll blame yourselves forevermore when they end up dead, owing to lack of care. These chaps try to fulfil an ambition to do something their cronies will think brave. They've oft-faced years of scorn and derision without the admiration which they crave. So this makes them act sans thinking things through, and endanger young lives they take with them, by doing risky things they shouldn't do. You'd be wise your consent not to give them. For goodness sake tell these Burks to get lost, before your kids pay the ultimate cost. Try to avoid poison. Try not to poison a rat, mouse, or shrew. For if they die inside, they'll cause a smell, and if outside and they're eaten, then you will have poisoned other creatures as well. It's better, in fact, if you want them dead, to kill them with traps of the older sort. Then other creatures may be fed with the rats, mice, and shrews which you have caught. Better still to use traps that are humane, and to allow them to go on living. Then not only do you cause little pain, but it's the gift of life you are giving. Release them, though, at least 2 miles afar, or they will be back home before you are. Health and us. If you are a person born fit and well, you are incredibly lucky indeed, and you have no right to make your life hell by taking substances which you don't need. Some babes are born with disabilities, from which they suffer for their whole lives through. We healthy ones should strive and never cease to help them to do the best they can do. Anyone who takes resources from them by succumbing to their basest instincts, the rest of us should severely condemn, because quite frankly their attitude stinks. It's time we made those who make themselves ill forego free health care and pay for their bill. Ladies, beware of hairdressers. Ladies, you should have hairdressers beware. They can do your hair a great deal of harm. Though they claim they've talent for cutting hair, some have merely got camp exotic charm. In their phony foreign accents they'll say that your hair needs lifting with gaudy dyes, which hurt natural looks, rot hair away, cause blotchy skin, and would clash with your eyes. And it is shocking, their dreadful haircuts, they look chewed and spiky and all mangled, as if from them a hungry plague of rats had by their incisor teeth been dangled. Why not ask Hub? If he's hands and can see, he can't give you a worse cut, and he's free. Don't follow fashion. Most times when you move into a new house, you do not in fact need a new kitchen. For goodness sake, use your God-given nous, and don't be dictated to by fashion. As long as everything is working, and nothing is really falling to bits, and no major problems are there lurking, then why should you throw aught out to the skips? Things may benefit from a decent wash, and a lick or two of paint might be nice, but to buy new for fashion's sake is tosh, so save your money is my sound advice. For if you update, it's always been clear, the fashion will change yet again next year. Why not give things a try? Don't be sniffy about what others like and think your tastes are classier by far. There's much to be said for riding a bike rather than driving a snazzy sports car. Also, playing bingo is tremendous. It relaxes and stimulates the brain. And singing on a coach or on a bus makes one happier with each new refrain. And party games in which we all take part are great, as are folk and country dancing. These are all things very close to my heart, as they're extremely joy-enhancing. So ask yourselves, when all is said and done, is it sniffy folk who have the most fun? We all need each other. Please consider keeping a wild garden. It can fulfill so many of our needs. So do not let your attitudes harden against wild plants, which no doubt you call weeds. They are vital for the shelter they provide, for sleeping, laying eggs, and raising young. They have long enabled cloth to be dyed, and bound wounds and breaks, since time has begun. They give lots of us creatures food to eat. For instance, bees nectar, and rabbits dogs, and human beings extra wants they meet, with digitalis from loves of the fox. All our species are interdependent, so if you hate any, please do relent. Friendship. Do not befriend people out of pity, nor make new friends merely because they're low. For when they realize, they'll be iffy, and could have missed out on real friends to know. All friendships should always be self-centered, and purely to meet one's own desires. If they're not, relationships once entered become friendships of which one swiftly tires. There's no fun in friendships born of duty, no pleasure in receiving charity. Relationships should be things of beauty, with mutual joy a priority. For each of us is someone in the end who'll be pleased as punch just to be our friend. Sonnet Sense. Do not live your whole lives in fear and dread of what the cruel fates may have in store. With contentment each morn jump out of bed. Strive to think positively evermore. Because if you expect all of the time an awful sadness that might never be, as sure as eggs is eggs, you're bound to prime a tragic self-fulfilling prophecy. Because happy folk are extremely great, merely to be around every day. Whereas misery guts one's bound to hate, therefore they do drive their dear ones away. So keep yourselves cheerful and full of fun, and you will be loved by every one. Some wise but not nice advice. Be quite wary when making a new friend, for they could cause you a great deal of strife, if they come to completely depend upon your help for the rest of your life. If you're wise, choose those sans depression, of whose happy lives you're totally sure, or they may gift you with a succession of problems which they expect you to cure. Avoid like the plague those who are tearful, who are quite frankly a pain in the neck, and be aware that those over-cheerful may be compensating, so always check. But if you're kind, ignore all I've said, but don't blame me if you're drained till you're dead. Eyes. Eyes. Never ever take them for granted. You do not know when they'll stop functioning. So continually be enchanted by lovely vistas each journey may bring. Absorb all wondrous objects of beauty that you happen across every day. Make sure you keep them in your memory, pigeonholed and securely stored away. Beauty which you can always remember if perchance you happen to lose your sight, which enables you to stir an ember of all those pretty things before your night. Eyes are the conduits to each person's mind. Make sure you use them in case you go blind. This earth, what a wonderful creation, which cruel mankind seems bent on destroying. Why should it be that nation against nation weapons of death are ever employing? And what is the point of the world's churches preaching messages of brotherly love, if their followers' actions besmirches all guidance received from heaven above? It cannot be right to kill another just for embracing a different creed, and in the process harm our earth mother, leaving such despair, suffering, and need. We must all strive to live at peace, not war, or this earth one day soon may be no more. Sensible sonnet. Don't look forward to the end of the year, expecting the next one to be better, for it could, in fact, bring many a tear, and the climate might even be wetter. Do not wish that January was June, confident you'll be basking in the sun, or you may discover that all too soon the good moments in your life are all done. Don't embrace that Monday morning feeling and assume that next weekend will be great. By then, perhaps, your brain could be reeling and your life be in one hell of a state. Sensible folk enjoy every day, in case the grim reaper is on his way. Now, how to say no sonnet. If you've any sense, don't trust anyone until you know them as well as could be. They are tricksters with tales to be spun, designed to relieve you of your money. They may inform you that they are dying, or they might tell you that they've lost their jobs. You will never know if they are lying. They can produce tears at will, even sobs. They are smart and incredibly cunning, and they will play on your conscience with ease. Their powers of persuasion so stunning, you'll feel bad if you ignore all their pleas. Tell them with sorrow, it is such a bind, but I can't help you. I hope you don't mind. We must stop this carnage on our roads. Why are stupid folk allowed to drive cars? They know not how dangerous they can be, and somewhere, sometime, underneath the stars, they will smash into a wall or a tree. Their bodies will be crushed into pieces and mangled up with those of their best mates. It will devastate all their families and be a loss which never abates. They'll be lauded in the local media. We'll be told they were bright and almost saints. No, they were sinners and much sillier, and on them we should have placed some restraints. We must ensure, before we let folk drive, they have the sense to keep themselves alive. Banish guilt. Don't feel guilty about doing nothing, if there's nothing that you have to do. But who can tell what the future may bring? Perhaps a never-ending workload for you. So relax and enjoy each quiet second. Even doze off if you feel so inclined, as awful struggles as yet unreckoned could well prove to be a terrible bind. You may never more get moments of time that you'll be able to call your own, condemned to drudgery long past your prime, your lost leisure for ever to bemoan. Therefore will guilt have no further dealings, just indulge any indolent feelings. The starving. What right have we to be fat and well fed, whilst millions are starving and dying? How is it we sleep peacefully in bed? We should, if we've a conscience, be crying. Surely governments should be more giving. For all our sakes we must see that they are. For there is no joy in easy living, if we are troubled by deaths, near or far. And if Christians really follow our Lord, and understand the things he was saying, we'll know he won't wish the starving ignored, and would want more from us than just praying. The starving must be fed, we must succeed. The good life's no fun, whilst others have need. Spouses. Remember to tell them you love them so, when you're at home and by phone when away, for that is vital for spouses to know, if they're to feel secure every day. And don't forget to present them with gifts when each anniversary comes around, for they are essential to give those lifts which build relationships up to be sound. Then you ought to take them out on the town, a frequent but a regular outing. It avoids dull routine from getting you down, which may cause rows and possible shouting. Be kind to spouses, always show you care, and you will find they will always be there. Beware experts. Beware of experts giving safety views, or those opinions meant to calm fear. The desire to keep jobs often imbues their minds, so they state things we'd like to hear. They want wages. Their need may be so strong, it means even more to them than our health. Therefore what they tell us might be all wrong, in order to best protect their own wealth. Therefore it's wise to doubt what experts say, both polluters and their watchdogs alike. They may fear if truth saw the light of day, someone could tell them to get on a bike. So ask experts who mouth, everything's fine. If it wasn't, is your job on the line? Small folk and dogs with large jaws. No one silly of a shortish stature should be allowed to own dogs with large jaws, for they have not the strength in their nature to stop them killing inside or outdoors. I know that these owners try to look tough, with piercings and tattoos on their faces, but I'm afraid that's not nearly enough, as we've oft seen with numerous cases. I realise that without such a mutt, they'd be insignificant little ticks, and be much too frightened their stuff to strut, and bound to miss their leg humps and face licks. But we mustn't let our children be killed, merely to let small folks' lives be fulfilled. Sonnet to childhood. Can't we let our children just be children? It's not that long since their lives were begun. We surely don't have to instill in them every nastiness under the sun. And they don't really need to be grown up until they exceed the full 18 years. Only then knowledge needs to be sewn up as to life's perils and dangers and fears. But then kids must not have so much freedom, out all alone to become street-aware, or you may find you've clothed and did feed them, merely to lose them as you were not there. Please protect your children, each girl and boy. Make childhood a time of innocent joy. Advice for wives. If you are quite happily married, then beware all of those girly weekends. For at them you'll be constantly harried by the divorcees, some now lesbians. They'll go on about how dreadful men are, and ask why on earth you stay with your bloke, and claim that they are happier by far since their own marriages went up in smoke. They'll brag their homes are now free of farting, and how great not to be bothered in bed, till you yearn for your hubby's departing after you've considered all that they've said. And as soon as you get rid of your man, they'll wed either you or him, if they can. Terrorism. What is the point of fighting terrorism? For terrorists always win in the end. Unless one is prepared to kill all of them, it's best if we to their wants swiftly bend, for civilized people are limited by having to follow the rule of law. Terrorists are not so inhibited, and can legalities always ignore, so they must succeed in getting their way, as has in the past, for instance, been shown by Mau Mau and also the IRA. So why wait till victims' numbers have grown? Therefore start dialogue, waste no more time, make the world peaceful and free it from crime. Envy and the Joneses. Attempting to keep up with the Joneses is daft beyond belief. Whether one buys as costly homes, cars or mobile phones is as unimportant as relative size. How can one decide what goods one acquires according to other folks' possessions, even if they're people that one admires? One's own needs should come first, not obsessions. Be wise and rid oneself of such pressures. Content oneself with whatever one's got. Realise what are one's life's true treasures, and show things one couldn't care a jot. But if one can't shift envy from one's bones, then do the obvious, call oneself Jones. Why? Why do young adults ignore a parent, when a parent always knows what is best? Could it be perhaps somehow inherent for them to rebel at any request? It's never wise to ignore good advice, or one's parents' wealth of experience. Many problems could be solved in a trice, if they sought parental interference. Yet over and over, since days of old, many youngsters their own lives have destroyed. If only they'd heeded what they were told, they'd have done well, and we'd not be annoyed. There must come a time, or I do hope so, when youngsters listen to what parents know. Great nations. Do not assess the worth of a nation on the fact it can bomb others to bits, or can afford to run a space station, or make famous TV shows panned in crits. Instead, ask if its citizens are free. Do they have happy and healthy lifestyles? Are they environmentally friendly? And do they greet all strangers with nice smiles? Do their sportsmen and sportswomen flourish? Do their writers and artists of note? And composers and actors they nourish? That is the country which will get my vote. It is not wealth and might which makes nations great. It's how well they nurture the human state. The advantages of a religious belief. How good to have a religious belief. It can assist one in numerous ways. For instance, if one is prostrate with grief, it provides comfort through those endless days. It gives guidance to how to lead one's life by listing all those things one shouldn't do, such as that coveting one's neighbour's wife, killing and saying stuff that isn't true. It encourages one to do one's best and help others and to love and care. And whether one goes north, south, east or west, belief, if one needs it, is always there. And the great thing is, it's completely free. unlike psychiatry and psychology. The Christian Church. I'm worried about the Christian Church. Has it the slightest chance of enduring when its members our Lord's teachings besmirch with their closed, mean minds which require curing? How can kids, brought up free of bigotry, join a religion which in word and deed condemns certain folks' sexuality and denies many the chance to succeed? If it can't attract kids to come along, then where are the future congregations? Surely it sees what it's doing is wrong if it ends any church-youth relations. Do not sound Christianity's death knell. Just learn to love all, and all will be well. Waiting for the bus. I never mind any late-running bus. There's always something to do, sun or rain. So to the bus drivers I make no fuss, and anyway it's cars which are to blame. If I am forced to wait in the country, there are beasts and birds, bugs and wild flowers, which, as I love wildlife photography, can keep me contented for hours and hours. If I find myself waiting in a town, there are lots of interesting places, and invariably people around to chat to, or just study their faces. Gosh, I've writ some verse with metre and rhyme. It breeds that too, when a bus ain't on time. Men are like gold dust. Dear wives, if your husbands are still around, then you are indeed very fortunate. For nature programs most men, it's been found, with numbers of women to procreate. If you look into the mirror and see that your bits and your bobs are all dropping, he may incredibly likely be considering going off a-shopping. So don't be conned by friends who are lonely that a girly trip away would be nice. For the same thought may occur to hubby, and might not end, so I give this advice. Stay with and spoil your man whilst he's there, or you may well find you drove him elsewhere. Advice to husbands. Each husband should appreciate his wife, and always show her how much he loves her. Though polygamous, do not harm her life by having an affair with another. Your wife may have lost a few of her looks, but then you have lost yours too, probably. And if she cleans, washes, irons and cooks, then you are still incredibly lucky. And be warned, with her you have a whole house. If she divorced you, then half you would lose. So it would be daft to be a faithless louse. Just think, before the wrong path you do choose. And remember, your friends, family too, may no longer want to be mates with you. Relations and special birthdays. Be wary that you do not celebrate special birthdays for relations too soon, or you are bound to resent, even hate, the pressure to come up with something new. Suppose you give them a great 60th and an amazing 65th party, and better for the Bible's age of death and the 3/4 of a century, continually topping the one just past, and still 4 more till they reach 100, then the thought, next birthday might be their last, so must be more special before they're dead. Best ignore old folks' birthdays if you're wise, or you'll end up longing for their demise. The secret of a successful marriage. Never nag a husband who seldom shaves, and who lets his hair grow scruffy and long. Object if he drinks or misbehaves, or his feet give off a bit of a pong. Never worry if he acts like a slob, and all your friends find him rude or a bore. And don't be upset if his open gob keeps you awake every night with his snore. Never go on at him to dress smartly, with polished shoes and a collar and tie. Just dream of how handsome he used to be, when his charming good looks first caught your eye. And rejoice, you need not stay young or slim, as no one else will ever fancy him. The perils of sun worship. If you spend more than short times in the sun, never forget to cover up your skin, or cancer, that terrible smoking gun, will inevitably worm its way in. So dress yourself from your neck to your toes. Always wear a broad-brimmed hat on your head, And if you choose any bit to expose, apply suntan lotion, or you'll be dead. But goodness knows why folk wish to get tanned. Even golden ones are skin that's dying, and those red ones, I can't understand why it's thought nice to have one's skin frying. Sun-worshipping is a daft thing to do. You'll look like old boots, and it may kill you. Knitting and natter. I don't recommend knitting and natter, for it isn't exactly enriching. It may sound nice, a hobby with chatter, but often ends up stitching and bitching. Oh, it is man-made fibre that you use. I knit alpaca, cashmere, or mohair. Far be it from me a yarn to abuse, but I think man-made shows one doesn't care. And you're knitting this thing for your grandchild. But all our children have so much these days, and spoilt brats drive me completely wild. And charity needs us in lots of ways. But if you're built of really stern stuff, stitching and bitching is pleasant enough. It is not nice. It is not nice when families fall out over the contents of their loved ones' homes. They are dead. You shouldn't argue and shout, but comfort each other in kindly tones. The best way to avoid strife is draw lots to decide whom should be the one to start. Then take it in turns to choose plants and pots and tables, chairs, sideboards and works of art. Or if you can behave generously and offer everything to the others, then there is little doubt that you will see, so too will all your sisters and brothers. And think, you've lived sans the dead things for years. It's only their deaths should cause any tears. Avoid stripping. I do not advise stripping wallpaper. It is far wiser to leave it in place, or you'll wear out yourself and the scraper over the months of slog and dust you'll face. There'll probably be layer on layer, each one harder to remove than the last, and when at last at the bare walls you stare, the plaster will not be adhering fast. It will crumble and need to be redone, so a plasterer will have to be hired. Then you will wish that you'd never begun with the cost and repapering required. So repaste it where it has come away, patch fill where needed, and paint in one day. Don't be fooled. Just because you read in some magazine that things you own are unfashionable, if they're not worn, replacing them's obscene, even if new ones are affordable. And remember, such drivel's by some hack, who a job in journalism clinches, and then has, if he's to avoid the sack, to supply regular column inches. Thus the stuff which they write may not be true. In fact, it very probably is not. They must scribe something for gullible you, so invent tripe if they're put on the spot. As journers like to be housed, clothed, and fed, don't chuck aught because of what you have read. Beware grandchildren. Be wary what you give your first grandchild. You will want to be generous, of course, but for goodness sake don't go really wild, or it could lead to a lot of remorse. £1,000 in a savings account. Well, you suppose you could just afford it. It's your first, and not that large an amount, and you ought in some way to record it. But then along comes numbers 2 and 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, and all have to be treated equally, and it is £10,000 you've spent then. Don't be too generous, do think it through, or your grandchildren may well bankrupt you. Try to forget. Don't remember those dates when loved ones died. It's not healthy for your life yet to come to have each year recall of when you cried with grief for a dead relation or chum. For as you get older you may well find you're always sad, as each new week does bring memories of those who've left you behind to go to hell or where the angels sing. If they were worth aught, they'll not wish that you continue with an annual mourning. And would you want your death to drive folk to feel wretched at any new day's dawning? Once folk are gone, there's nothing can be done. Forget when they died, or life won't be fun. Don't look. Do not look in any mirror or glass and worry you appear ugly and old. Nearly everyone does as the years pass, if they've avoided being dead and cold. It's best not to look at yourself at all, and merely rejoice that you can still see. And if you can hear, speak, smell, and walk tall, you have no reason to be unhappy. It is others who have drawn the short straw, your family, friends, acquaintances, who, if they are kind and still love and adore, will have to continue looking at you. So if old and ugly, don't you forget, it's for those around you should feel upset. Never when old. Never climb a ladder when you are old. It's a really, really daft thing to do. You may still feel fit and young, brave and bold, but if you faint, 'twill be the end of you. Never lift big weights if of advanced years, for it's easy then to put out your back and end up with a life of pain and tears, and missing all those movements you will lack. Ne'er run for aught if an old girl or bloke. You may trip and break a limb or your neck, or sustain a heart attack or a stroke, or some other fate which will your life wreck. Leave deadly things to those who are younger, and hopefully you'll live a lot longer. Do's and don'ts for older folk. If you want kids and grandkids to love you and crave your company when you are old, then the things to do and not to do to stop your relationships growing cold. Don't assume they desire your company. They would probably much prefer their mates, and don't want to be there for your birthday, or their own, or Christmas, or other dates. Don't be grand. Never lose the common touch. Do not put upon them in any way. Listen, don't nag, don't top them or talk much. When with them, praise them at least once a day. If you don't expect aught, then you will find they will seek you out and be really kind. Beware grandparents. They've never tripped over draught excluders, or over any loose mats or loose rugs. Why lock windows? They've had no intruders. Why put protectors on sockets for plugs? Who'd chew an electricity cable? They've not experienced burns whilst cooking, danger from hot drinks on a low table, and fire guards with security hooking. Stairgates on stairs which kids can't get beyond. Why must children use special car seats? Don't be daft, poisoned or drowned in the pond. Why should toddlers wear reins in the streets? They were grandparents. Of course they knew best. Those weren't though the findings at the inquest. This dangerous campaign. Until youth unemployment is no more, every nation will the day be ruing, when we old people kept young people poor, by taking jobs which they could be doing. The devil does make work for idle hands, but mainly only when people are young. You don't see many old folk out in bands, holding a bomb or a knife or a gun. So if we old folk would prefer to know future lives which are not filled up with fear, we should stand aside and let young folk go for the few vacancies which do appear. If we old people refuse to retire, prospects for a civilized world are dire. To the elderly, if you are getting on a bit in years, it's a bad idea to buy a pet, without considering my awful fears that it may make you both very upset. For what happens when you get ill and old and have to move somewhere else for your care, and when you and your pet arrive, you're told that no pets at all are permitted there? And then again, what happens when you die and your pet is left distraught and alone, gazing forlornly at each passer-by, hoping to find a nice new loving home? Losing you would cause a pet so much strife, so don't buy one. Do not ruin its life. Get socializing. If you are in a nursing or rest home and have a modicum of common sense, don't be standoffish, staying on your own, but socialize with other residents. They are probably no older than you, and not necessarily more senile, and enjoy doing things you like to do, so you have no reasons them to revile. Why not organize talks, Scrabble and cards, and classes for painting, singing, dancing, or writing, you may find a few new bards, and there may be chances for romancing. Don't sit alone slowly going gaga, but mix, and you'll be happier by far.